So, hi guys, and welcome again to my channel. This session will talk about the mixing solution, one of the application of the differential equation. So, what are we waiting for? Let's start. So, when we talk about mixing solutions application of the differential equation, this is said to be the rate of change of the mass or amount, or what we said the quantity of M in a tank or reservoir is equal to the difference of incoming rate and the outgoing rate. So we need to know the incoming rate and the outgoing rate of the tank. So let's say you have this tank. So you have to identify the incoming and the outgoing rate. So for the general solution, any changes in the mass with respect to time is equal to the incoming minus the outgoing. So what are the incoming and what are the outgoing? So we will have the C1 V1 and the C2 V2. 1 for the incoming and then 2 for the outgoing. So you will have the dm over dt, which is what we call the change rate of the mass. So that is mass over time. So any changes with respect to time. Then for the V1, that is what we call the input volume rate. When we say volume rate, that is volume per unit time. So 1 for the input. Then we will have C1, input concentration. Now, if we are talking about the concentration, that is defined as mass per unit volume. So we will have 1 also for the input. Now we do also have V2 and C2. V2 is also a volume rate, kaya lang 2 for the output. Then C2 is also a concentration, tapos 2 is also for the output. So for the designation, you will have 1 for the input, then 2 for the output. But kapag hinalo natin yung nasa tank, syempre hindi na natin alam kung ano yung lumalabas na concentration. So we have the formula for the concentration of the output. So that is C2 equals M over VO plus the quantity of V1 minus V2 multiplied by the time. Wherein your VO is what we call the initial volume of the tank. So syempre, meron tayong initial volume at the tank. Then T is for the time. Now let's talk about the examples para mas madali nating maintindihan yung concept ng mixing solution. So first example, you have a tank contains 80 gallons of pure water. Then we have a brine solution with 2 pounds per gallon of salt enters at 2 gallons per minute. And the well-stirred mixtures lives at the same rate. Now we have to find the amount of salt in the tank at any time. And the time at which the brine leaving will contain 1 pound per gallon of salt. Okay, let's talk about the givens. Given we have the initial volume at the tank, you will have 80 gallons. So a tank contains 80 gallons of pure water. So we have the initial volume at the tank, which is 80 gallons. Then C1 is the input concentration. So ito yung pumapasok na concentration, that is 2 pounds per gallon. So natin nakuha yon, a brine solution with 2 pounds per gallon enters. So ibig sabihin that is your input. Then you also have enters at 2 gallons per minute. So that is your V1, which is 2 gallons per minute. That is volume rate. Tapos sinabi na it leaves at the same rate. So ibig sabihin your outgoing volume rate is equal to the incoming volume rate. So that is V1 equals V2. That is equivalent to 2 gallons per minute. So first, we have to identify the C2 or the output concentration. Our formula for the C2 is M over VO plus the quantity of V1 minus V2 multiplied by the time. So if we apply it, equated siya sa M over our VO is 80 plus this is equal, that is 2 minus 2 multiplied by the T. So that is equated to M over 80. So that is our C2. Next is we apply the formula, the change of m with respect to t is equated to the incoming minus the outgoing. So we have the C1V1 and the C2V2. Our C1 is 2, our V1 is 2, minus our C2 is m over 80, and our V2 is 2. Now simplifying this equation, we will now have dm over dt equated to 4 minus m over 40. Then simplifying again this into one fraction, that is 40, all over 40, which is 160 minus m, kasi 40 multiplied by 4 is 160, then minus m over 40. Then we have this equation, which is dm over dt equated to 160 minus m over 40. So we may use separation of variables. So if we do separation of variable, this will become dm over 160 minus m equated to dt over 40. Now, kapag na-separate na natin yung variables, pwede na tayo mag-integrate. So we will now have the integral of dm over 160 minus m equated to the integral of dt over 40 plus c. So if we let u as 160 minus m, our du is equated to negative dm. So we will now have to insert negative 1 inside and balance by negative 1 outside. So we may do ln. So that is negative ln of u, which is 160 minus m. Then this one is 1 over 40 multiplied by t plus c. Then, gagawin natin exponent si negative, that is ln of 160 minus m raised to negative 1 equated again to 1 over 40 multiplied by t plus c. Next is taking the exponential of both sides. You will now have e raised to ln of 160 minus m raised to negative 1 equated to e raised to 1 over 40 t plus c. That will become, yung e raised to ln matatanggal. So this part will be 160 minus m raised to negative 1. Then this part, pwede natin paghiwalayin, magiging e raised to c to. Tapos this will be e raised to 1 over 40 multiplied by t. Since e raised to c is a arbitrary constant, pwede natin siyang gawing c. Kaya naging c e raised to t over 40. Now, we will do the substitution of m equals 0 at t is equal to 0. Saan natin ito nakuha? Now, let's analyze the problem. Initially, you have 80 gallons of pure water. When we say pure water, there's no other solution. So, ibig sabihin, there's no mass inside the tank initially. So, ibig sabihin po nun, at initial time, our mass inside the tank is 0. So if we apply m equals 0 and t equals 0 at the equation, you will now have 160 minus 0 raised to negative 1 equated to c e raised to 0 for 40. E raised to 0 is 1, so ang magiging equation na natin, our c is 1 over 160, since this will be 160 raised to negative 1. Then, i-apply na natin si c dun kay general solution. We will now have 1 over 160 minus m, since this is negative 1. Then, c is 1 over 160. Then, e raised to t over 40. Now, we will now have 160 e raised to negative t over 40 equated to 160 minus m. So, for letter A, the amount of salt in the tank at any time t, which is your m, or which is the mass of the salt inside the tank at any time t. This is an equation of m with respect to t. So if we simplify this, our equation of mass with respect to time is m equals 160 minus 160 e raised to negative t over 40. Now, how about for letter B? For letter B, our output concentration, which is CO, or said to be our C2, is equal to 1 pound per gallon, equated to m over 80. Saan natin nakuha yung 1 pound per gallon? So, that is in the problem. So brine leaving will contain 1 pound per gallon of salt. So that is our C2 or our CO. Our CO equation is M over 80. All we have to do is to find the value of M. So kapag inequate natin tong dalawa, that is 1 equals M over 80. The value of our M is 80. So yun ngayon yung gagamitin natin dun sa equation natin na nakuha kanina. That is 80 equals 160 minus 160 e raised to negative t over 40. So all you have to do is to find the value of t. That is 80 minus 160 equated to negative 160 e raised to negative t over 40. Then dividing the whole equation or the both side into negative 160, that is 80 or negative 80 over negative 160 equated to e raised to negative t over 40. Then taking the ln of both sides, this is 80 over 160, that's equivalent to 1/2. Thus you will have ln of e raised to negative t over 40 equals ln of 1/2. So you will now have negative t over 40 kasi mawawala na si ln e, then equated to ln of 1/2. Then for the t, this will become equated to negative 40 ln of 1/2. Now if we input it to the calculator, the value of our t is 27.73 minutes. So after 27.73 minutes, the brine leaving in the tank is 1 pound per gallon. So let's go to example number 2. For example number 2, we have for the tank in the previous problem, you have to determine the limiting value for the amount of salt in the tank after a long time. And for letter B, how much time must pass before the amount of salt in the tank reaches 80% of the limiting value. So solution for letter A, for the limiting value, pag sinabi natin na limiting value, ibig sabihin wala nang pagbabago dun sa mass inside the tank kahit tumakbo pa yung oras. So ibig sabihin, the changes of M with respect to T must be approaches to 0. There's no changes na. So our dm over dt must be approaching 0. So the equation of our dm over dt kanina is equal to 4 minus m over 40. So that is 4 minus m over 40 equated to 0 kasi nga approaching 0 si dm over dt. In that case, kapag sinimplify natin to, the limiting value of the mass inside the tank is 160 pounds. So that is the answer for letter A. Now for letter B, we need to find 80% of the limiting value. If our limiting value is 160 pounds, then the 80% of the 160 pounds is 128 pounds. The question is how much time or kailan siya magkakaroon ng 80% of the limiting value or what we computed 128 pounds. So yung equation natin kanina, that is m equals 160 minus 160 e raised to negative t over 40. The value of our m is 128 pounds. So you will have 128 equated to 160 minus 160 e raised to negative t over 40. Then simplifying the equation, you will now have to transpose 160 to the other side and divide both sides by negative 160. So you will now have 128 minus 160 all over negative 160 equated to e raised to negative t over 40. Then taking the ln of both sides, you will now have ln of e raised to negative t over 40 equated to ln of 1 over 5. Yung 1 over 5 come from negative 32 over 160. So pag sinimplify mo yung negative 32 over 160, that's 1 over 5. Then, kapag sinimplify natin yung equation na to, we will now have negative t over 40 equated to ln of 1 over 5. Now, to find the time, you will now have negative 40 ln of 1 over 5. If we compute yung negative 40 ln of 1 over 5, that will be 64.38 minutes or approximately equal to 64 minutes. So kapag after 64 minutes, yung laman ng tank is 80% of the limiting value, which is 128 pounds. Next problem number 3. We have brine having concentration of 3 pounds per gallon enters a tank filled with 100 gallons of pure water at the rate of 4 gallons per minute. The solution is kept stirred uniformly and living at the rate of 4 gallons per minute. Determine the amount of salt at any time. So this is also an equation of M with respect to T. Then the amount of salt after 1 hour. So after mo makuha yung equation ni M with respect to T, substitute natin si 1 hour para makuha natin yung amount of salt. Then for the letter C, we have to compute for the limiting value of the salt after a long period of time. So ito yung dm over dt wherein approaching to 0. So let's start. Identify first the given. Our initial volume is 100 gallons. That is 100 gallons. Then for our input concentration, that is 3 pounds per gallon. Then for the input volume rate, that is 4 gallons per minute. Then also living at the same rate, which is 4 gallons per minute. So that is equal to V2. So V1 is equal to V2. Now let's compute for the output concentration. So we will now have M over VO plus quantity of V1 minus V2 multiplied to T. Substitute natin yung mga given. Equated ngayon siya sa M over 100 which is your VO plus 4 minus 4 multiplied to T, that is equated to M over 100 kasi makakancel si 4 minus 4 multiplied to T. Now, after having the C2 follow our formula, you will now have dm over dt equated to C1 V1 minus C2 V2. Equated ngayon siya kay C1 is 3, V1 is 4, minus C2 is M over 100, then our V2 is 4. Now, pag sinimplify natin yan, we will now have dm over dt 12 minus M over 25. Then kapag sinimplify natin as one fraction, you will have 300 minus M all over 25. Now we will do separation of variables again. If we do the separation of variables again, you will now have dm over 300 minus M equated to dt over 25. Since na-separate na natin yung variables, pwede na tayong mag-integrate. Kapag in-integrate natin yan, we will have an equation of the integral of dm over 300 minus M equals the integral of dt over 25 plus c. Now, if we let u as 300 minus M, our du is negative dm. So we will have to insert negative 1 inside, then balance by negative 1 outside. You will now have negative of the ln of u, which is 300 minus M. This side, that is 1 over 25 multiplied by t plus c. Then, gagawing exponent si negative 1, that is ln of 300 minus M raised to negative 1 equated to 1 over 25 t plus c. Then, taking the exponential of both sides, you will have e raised to ln of 300 minus M raised to negative 1 equated to e raised to 1 over 25 multiplied by t plus c. Then again, katulad nung kanina, makakancel si e raised to ln. So you will now have 300 minus M raised to negative 1. Then this side, magiging e raised to 1 over 25 multiplied to t. Then multiplied to e raised to c, wherein e raised to c is our arbitrary constant which can be simplified into c. Kaya naging c e raised to t over 25. Now this is our general solution. Now all we have to do is to find the value of c. Now we have to substitute that at initial time, the value of our m is 0. Kasi nga, at initial time, you have pure water at the tank. So the mass inside the tank is 0 at our initial time. So if we substitute the values of m and t, you will now have the quantity of 300 minus 0 raised to negative 1 equated to c e raised to 0 over 25. We all know that e raised to 0 is 1, so we will have the value of c as 1 over 300. So kapag sinubstitute na natin si c dun sa general solution natin, we will now have 1 over 300 minus m equated to 1 over 300 then e raised to t over 25. Then kapag simplify natin to, we will now have 300 e raised to negative t over 25 equated to 300 minus m. Then for answer of A, the amount of salt at any time t, or the equation of the m with respect to t, that is m equated to 300 minus 300 e raised to negative t over 25. Now for letter B, we have to find the amount of salt after 1 hour. So meron na tayong equation ni m with respect to t. All we have to do is to substitute the value of t para makuha natin yung value ni m. So for the continuation, our time is 1 hour. Since naka-minutes yung volume rate natin, all we have to do is to convert 1 hour into minutes. So we have 60 minutes every 1 hour. So all we have to do is m equals 300 minus 300 e raised to negative 60 over 25. Then try to input it to the calculator. Makukuha natin the value ni m is 272.78 pounds. Now for the letter C, wherein you have to get the limiting value of this problem, the changes in m with respect to t must be approaching 0. So the equation of our dm over dt is 12 minus m over 25. All we have to do is to equate it kay 0. So you will have 12 minus m over 25 equated to 0. Then kapag sinimplify na natin to, or if we evaluate this equation, ang makukuha natin na limiting value ni mass inside the tank at a very long time is 300 pounds. Next problem, we have problem number 4. So we have brine having a concentration of 3 pounds per gallon enters a tank filled with 100 gallons pure water at the rate of 4 gallons per minute. Now the solution is kept stirred uniformly and living at the rate of 3 gallons per minute. Now you have to determine the amount of salt at any time. So this is also an equation of m with respect to t. Then the amount of salt after 1 hour. So in this case, yung na-encounter natin kanina equals si V1 at si V2. Now in this problem, V1 is not equal to V2. Now let's see kung ano mangyayari kapag hindi equal si V1 at si V2. Now identifying the given, we have the initial volume which is 100 gallons. Then for the C1 or the input concentration, that is 3 pounds per gallon. Then the input volume rate is 4 gallons per minute. Then the output volume rate is 3 gallons per minute. Now, solving for your output concentration, you will now have m over VO plus the quantity of V1 minus V2 multiplied by the T. Equated ngayon siya sa m over 100, which is your VO, plus 4 minus 3 multiplied by the T plus, that is equal to m over 100 plus T. So, if we follow the formula, you will now have 3 multiplied by 4, which is your C1 V1 minus m over 100 plus T multiplied to 3, which is your C2 V2. Then, kapag sinimplify natin yan, that is dm over dt equated to 12 minus 3m over 100 plus t. If you will notice, kapag inayos natin to, this is in the linear equation form. So that is dm over dt plus 3 over 100 plus t multiplied to m equals 12. So that is linear. This is dm, you have the multiplier m, then you have the p of t and the q of t. So you will have the p of t, which is 3 over 100 plus t, and our q of t is 12. Since this is linear, we have to find for the integrating factor of the equation. So you will have e raised to the integral of 3 dt over 100 plus t. So that is e raised to 3 integral of dt over 100 plus t. So you will have to let u as 100 plus t, our du is dt. So you will have e raised to 3 ln of 100 plus t. Then gagawin natin exponent si 3. You will now have e raised to ln of 100 plus t cube. Then makakancel si e raised to ln. Ang mangyayari, our integrating factor is quantity of 100 plus t raised to 3. Now we have the integrating factor. Since naka-dm over dt tayo, we will now have m multiplied by the integrating factor, which is 100 plus t cube equated to the integral of our q of t, which is 12, multiplied by the integrating factor of 100 plus t cube dt plus c. Now, evaluating this equation by letting u as 100 plus t, then your du is equal to dt. Pasok po ito sa power formula. So you will now have m multiplied to 100 plus t cube equated to 12 multiplied by 100 plus t raised to 4 over 4 plus c. Then 12 over 4 is 3 multiplied to 100 plus t raised to 4. Then equated to m multiplied by 100 plus t cube plus c. This is our general solution. All we have to do is to find a particular solution for you to find the amount of salt at any time t. Kaya lang, we have to find the value of m and t at initial. So initially, at time is equal to 0, what is the amount of your mass? If you have a pure water initially, so obviously, our value ng m is 0 at t is equal to 0 kasi nga pure water yung nasa tank natin. So if we substitute that to the formula or the general solution, you will now have this equation. Then you will have the value of c as negative 3, quantity 100 raised to 4. Then substitute the c at the general solution for you to be able to find a particular solution. You will have this equation. Then all you have to do is to find the equation of the m with respect to t. So simplifying the equation, you will now have m equals 3 multiplied to 100 plus t minus 3 raised multiplied to 100 raised to 4 multiplied to 100 plus t raised to negative 3. So this is the equation of the m with respect to t. Now for letter B, all you have to do is to have an equation or substitute the value of time at the computed equation dun kay letter A. So we have T is equated to 1 hour, or since naka-minutes yung volume rate natin, kailangan naka-minutes din yung time natin. So you have 60 minutes per 1 hour. So all you have to do is to substitute the 60 minutes dun kay equation ni M with respect to T. So kapag sinubstitute natin yung T, you will now have M equals 3 plus 100, 3 multiplied to 100 plus 60 minus 3 multiplied to 100 raised to 4 multiplied to 100 plus 60 raised to negative 3. So the M in this equation is computed as 406.76 pounds. So this is the mass inside the tank after 60 minutes. Now for the last problem, we have problem number 5. This is brine having a concentration of 3 pounds per gallon enters at the rate of 4 gallons per minute to a tank filled with 100 gallons of water initially mixed with 70 pounds of salt. The solution is kept stirred uniformly and living at the rate of 4 gallons per minute. Now determine the following. First is the amount of salt at any instant. So this is also an equation of M with respect to T. Second is the amount of salt after 1 hour. Then the last one is the limiting value of the salt at a very long time. So let's start by identifying the given. So we have the given as the initial volume, which is 100 gallons. Then the C1 or the input concentration, which is 3 pounds per gallon. Then you have V1 equated to V2. Kasi nga ang sabi sa problem, enters at the rate of 4 gallons per minute, then leaving at the rate of 4 gallons per minute. So V1 is equal to V2, which is equal to 4 gallons per minute. Then may bago, which is you have the initial mass at the tank. So that is 70 pounds of mass initially at the tank. So that is at time is equal to 0. So hindi na siya pure water kasi nga initially mixed with 70 gallons of salt. So our condition for finding the value of C is M equals 70 at T is equal to 0. But before that, all we have to do is to find your C2. So the C2 is equal to M over VO plus V1 minus V2 multiplied by the T. So that is equal to M over 100 plus 4 minus 4 multiplied by the T. That is simplified as M over 100. Then following the formula of the mixing solution, we have dm over dt equated to C1 V1 minus C2 V2. So we have 3 multiplied by 4 minus M over 100 multiplied by 4. Then simplifying that, you will now have 12 minus M over 25. Then kapag ginawa natin tong one fraction, we have 300 minus M over 25. Now, pwede natin gamitan ng separation of variables. Magiging dm over 300 minus m equated to dt over 25. Then, pwede na tayong mag-integrate. Now, kapag nag-integrate tayo, you will now have the integral of dm over 300 minus m equated to the integral of dt over 25 plus c. Now, if we let u as 300 minus m rather, the du is equal to negative dm. So, pwede tayo mag-insert ng negative 1 inside and balance by negative 1 outside. Then, you will now have negative ln of 300 minus m equated to 1 over 25 multiplied by the t plus c. Then, gagawin nating exponents in negative. You will have ln of 300 minus m raised to negative 1 equated to 1 over 25 multiplied by t plus c. Then, gawin nating exponential both side. So, you will have e raised to ln of the 300 minus m raised to negative 1 equated to e raised to 1 over 25 multiplied by t plus c. So, e raised to ln will be cancelled out. So, matitira is 300 minus m raised to negative 1. So, this side or this term, magiging e raised to t over 25 multiplied to e raised to c, wherein e raised to c can be simplified as c. Kaya naging c e raised to t over 25. Now, this is our general solution. Sabi ko nga kanina, for you to be able to find a particular solution, all you have to do is to find the value of c. Ngayon, para mahanap natin yung value ni c, all you have to do is to find the initial values of m and the t. So, the initial values of m and t is m equals 70 and t equals 0. So, sa t equals 0, at time initially, that is 0, you have the value of m. Kasi nga, the problem says that initially mixed with 70 pounds of salt. So, m is equal to 70 pounds. So, if we substitute this to the general solution, magkakaroon tayo ng 300 minus 70 raised to negative 1 equated to c e raised to 0 over 25. Therefore, our c is 1 over 230. Now, if we substitute the value of c to the general solution, you will now have 1 over 300 minus m equated to 1 over 230 multiplied to e raised to t over 25. It will be 230 multiplied to e raised to negative t over 25 equated to 300 minus m. Then for letter A, which is the equation of the m with respect to t, that is m equals 300 minus 230 e raised to negative t over 25. So this is the amount m at any time t. Now for letter B, you have the amount of salt after 1 hour. So you have our particular solution. All you have to do is to substitute the value of t, which is 1 hour. Kaya lang naka-minutes yung volume rate. So you have to convert 1 hour into minutes. So in every 1 hour, you have 60 minutes. So if we substitute 60 minutes to the equation, you will now have m equals 300 minus 230 e raised to negative 60 over 25. Now if we compute that, the value of t, or rather the value of m, sorry for the mistake, that is m, is 279.13 pounds. So for letter C, which is the limiting value of the problem, sorry for this. This is the continuation of the last problem, which is problem number 5. Sorry for the mistake. So going back, after a very long time, so you will have dm over dt. The changes in mass with respect to time must be approaching to 0 kasi nga limiting value ang kailangan natin. So you will have dm over dt equated to 12 minus m over 25. So i-equate lang natin sa 0. So 12 minus m over 25 equated to 0. So our limiting value in this problem is m equals 300 pounds. Again, this is the continuation of problem number 5, and this T must be M, or the mass. Sorry for the inconvenience. So that's it for this session. So I hope you learned a lot in this session. I hope you understand well yung about sa mixing solution application of the differential equation. Now, if you have any questions or clarifications, don't hesitate to comment down your questions or clarifications, or just PM me on my messenger. That's all. Thank you and God bless.